chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
All right, week one of NCAA Men's Division I/II Volleyball has concluded, and we are here in College Volleyball Weekly. I got to hit the headline. A team called Lincoln Memorial University, the Rail Splitters. Thoughts, you guys? Let's start with Dan Friend of Lewis.
I'm not surprised. I get it. Like, it's a good win for that program in a tough environment. But Cash has been doing a great job with this group of guys over the years. And if they were in a league, they'd already be in the NCAA tournament. So they're in the independent. So unfortunately, they haven't found a pathway yet. And so I think the guy that ultimately for them was the young guy that had a great, I would say, week for them in terms of that. And I think, Brad, you saw him firsthand, so you get to probably comment a little bit, right, in terms of that. So I'll be curious to see Theo and Brad because they both played them. But from the outside, great win for those guys. I'm stoked for them. It's a tough tournament for everybody that goes there because you're playing a bunch of games in a row. And I think it's a battle of attrition sometimes. So,
yep. How about you, Jay? George Mason.
I'm not surprised either. The more crossover we get with some of these teams that in years past have historically not been very strong, and all of a sudden they start getting some momentum and they build some great recruiting classes and they go through a little bit and learn how to play the game at a high level. This is going to happen more often. Yeah, Santa Barbara might not be as strong as they were in years past, and that's okay. It's still a great win for Lincoln Memorial, and super stoked.
Let's jump over to the first handful and first career victories for the two coaches on screen who saw them really close. We'll go with Theo Edwards from Cal State Northridge.
Sure. Yeah, it was that was actually the first time that I had seen them play in person, and the first time that I got to meet John Cash, who, man, one hell of a coach, awesome guy to talk to, and he has an interesting back history. If you guys have heard his whole story with baseball, and just a really, really interesting guy, but he's doing a phenomenal job, and they got a bunch of weapons. They got two really, really good middles, a good setter, and two outsides that have arms and are cagey, can do some things. So yeah, I actually watched that match against Santa Barbara firsthand, and they were lethal. Man, they got to a rhythm, and they were passing the ball incredibly well, and they're a good team. They're gonna definitely make some upsets if people aren't ready to play them, and they're capable. So it was a lot of fun to actually see them play.
Yep. And then we'll close out with Brad Rostratter, UC San Diego.
Yeah, the outside Dan was referring to is Chase Spadaro, I believe is how you say it. And he went off against Spadaro. Us. He played great throughout their 4-match stretch. They added an extra match against Pepperdine before the tournament even started. So they played a lot of volleyball, and they got their money's worth on the trip. And they got a really good setter, Cole Cooch, who came from junior colleges out here in California, and just a really solid team all around it. And they played some really good volleyball all 4 of those matches. And even in our match, we snuck out in 5 sets, but they outplayed us in just about every single statistical category. So they played some really good volleyball.
Yeah, before is Evan Corey, the big name out of Lincoln Memorial, the Bayou Bomber or the Cajun Crusher. But now you got Chase Spadaro, and I hate to shake salt in the wound there, Brad, but he had 18 kills, 0 error, or 1 error, and hit 708 against you.
Oh, so, I know, all too well.
All right, let's go around the horn here and see 1 or 2 match results or matches that grabbed our coach's eyes on the screen. We'll start with Theo on this one first.
Yeah, I thought the Stanford St. Francis matchup was really interesting. Obviously, I think they went 4 the first time and then ended up going 5. And obviously that St. Francis team was playing tough and real gritty. And I watched bits and pieces and got to see their defense and some of the stuff they were doing. But they gave Stanford a run for their money. I thought that was pretty exciting.
All right, let's jump over to Jay Hosick.
Just to rub more salt into Dan's wounds or into Brad's wounds. Santa Barbara out-hit, out-dug, out-blocked, and out-assisted every category against Lincoln Memorial, yet they still found a way to win. The match that I think surprised me, or not surprised me, but was a little bit eye-opening was Penn State against Ohio State. Penn State's missing 3 of their starters, Wildman, Marsh and Fisher were not playing in that match. And a young man by the name of John Kerr hit 545 against Ohio State, their opposite. That's pretty good. So if Penn State's beaten good teams like Ohio State without 3 of their starters, I shudder to think what they're going to look like with all of them in.
Yep. Let's jump over to Brad.
Yeah, I had both of those on my surprising list for me as well. And the other one was BYU over Lewis. And sorry, Dan, but it was two teams where both a lot of unknowns going into it. So getting to see them battle it out and play some really good volleyball throughout it at stretches. So that was the one that stood out the most to me. And partially, we got to watch a lot of Lewis to get ready for this week too.
That's right. The travel out to Chicago for the Tritons, and then we might as well go to the guy who just had salt shaken in his wounds, Dan Friend.
Well, I always think the Santa Barbara tournament's great because it's a tough tournament. You play 3 matches in 2 days. I think that's still the same format, right, guys? And so, I mean, certainly you saw Santa Barbara beat SC, and then you see Lincoln Memorial beat Santa Barbara. And certainly Theo got his first win. Brad got his first win. So I was watching a lot of that go on. But ultimately for us, it was, I mean, we got to see Irvine firsthand. And, you know, I think they're as good as everybody talks about. And, you know, I think Hino and Sani were great. You know, those guys had 2 really good matches against SM McKendree, and certainly are going to play at a high level. And Joe was running the offense for those guys. And so saw them be pretty dangerous in an environment where you walk in, it isn't notoriously easy to serve at if you haven't played there before. And so, and Capono at BYU again. So like you said, we got to see him firsthand, and he's doing some nice things. He had 2 nights. And so I think matches in front of me was what I was paying attention to a lot outside of that. But a lot of good volleyball, and excited this year as we get going. So I think 8 or 9 teams, 10, 15 haven't played yet. So hopefully they're going to all get going this weekend.
Gosh, it's first episode. We're already dropping the Smith Fieldhouse superstition, or is it the science, the physics of altitude? You know, we could have a debate all year long.
Why don't you just go with the true numbers, percentage of serves missed in that gym by everybody that plays, and they'll actually be in front.
There we go. So with that, you know, with a Santa Barbara term, I only add that one of the biggest swells of the century was hitting right outside there, the 50-year swell, humongous waves. And personally, I was distracted. So I think some of the Gaucho guys may have been distracted as well. Let's go into a couple top athlete performers. A few names have been dropped here already in some of the performances, but I wanted to see who caught your eyes. And we'll start with, let's go with Dan on this one.
Sani and Hino, like I said, Sani was 22 kills against us the first night. You know, but both those guys just hitting above 500. And putting up some pretty. Sani was serving like BYU radars there. He got a couple 75-mile-an-hours, and those are the. So they were rocking some balls at the same time. So those would be the 2 guys, easy for me in front of me. So yeah.
All right. How about you, Theo?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to watch our match against UCLA, but Ethan Champlin absolutely had a field day. I think he had maybe 1 error or errorless on 21 or 22 swings, 17 kills. And I don't know that he hit the same shot twice. He had tons of range, was moving the ball all over the place. It looked like he had an hour when he was in the air and attacking the ball. He could see the block. He knew what they were going to do and would make shots that we hadn't seen in our gym. So it absolutely helped us get better, but he had one hell of a performance, and I think he's going to have a great season.
Yeah, I'll help you out there. That's a 706, 12 kills, 0 errors, 2 aces, block, assists, and 5 digs. So
there it is.
Good night for Champlin. Let's go over to Jay Hosick, George Mason.
I'm going to do my best impression of the opposing coach when Wilt Chamberlain had his 100-point game into halftime. Hey, who's got Wilt, right? Like, that's what you're going to do. So here's my impression of Theo in between games 2 and 3. Hey, who's got Champlin? Who's going to get this guy slow him down a little bit? Yeah, that kid's pretty darn good. And I think what he's really doing is he's making America wake up that you really don't have to be a 6'9" outside hitter in order to be successful, especially at our level. So I think that's one kid you definitely look at. Kerr at Penn State, kid 6'9", bangs away. You're not paying attention to him. Just imagine how hard that fight must be between him and Fisher in the Penn State gym in practice. It's pretty two good weapons there. And I'm going to give one little underdog one. Ready for this? Leahy, middle blocker for St. Francis. If you are not paying attention to his float serve, it's probably the most wicked, lethal jump float in the country. It's nasty. Watch it.
All right, close out with Brad.
Yeah, I got two freshmen, one at Stanford, Teo Snui, the opposite they have up there, had a good weekend and has been good against the Canadian teams they've been playing as well. And then Dylan Klein, he got subbed in their first two matches. And then against us, he started and he played really, really well. And he was a really smooth, really efficient attacker for him. So two freshmen that are starting off the year strong.
Yep. 12-12 in the fifth set is all tied up, and SC goes on a 3-point run, 4-point run from there? 12.
3-point run, yeah.
Sorry, Brad. I was watching in the car on that one.
Hey,
So,
Rob,
I'm
I'm going to throw one more guy in though that we got to mention.
All right.
That's got to be Shea from Lincoln Memorial. That guy played 4 matches and was key in a lot of their success as a freshman, I believe, right, guys? From
Also
Yep,
a freshman,
freshman.
yep.
Oviedo, Florida.
we'd be remiss not to mention him and what he's doing for that group right there. I know they got a lot of the good pieces. Gentry's the middle. He's a pretty good player too, but we got to make sure we give some props to Shea. So
I thought you were going to throw in a TJ Murray reference.
no, but
There
you
it
got
is.
it. So that's great. Just so you know, if you had to eat it. So.
That concludes a week 1 of Volleyball Magazine's College Volleyball Weekly segment. We're going to continue the conversation over on College Volleyball Weekly over on Viral Volley Media with the same 4 coaches. There's plenty of action. There's a ton of tournaments. So thanks for tapping in. Be sure to follow volleyballmag.com and check out the streaming and the match listings on the site, updated daily for any kind of volleyball that's going to be out there streamed, and a bunch of other resources as well. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to College Volleyball Weekly over on Viral Volley Media. A continued conversation from volleyballmag.com's College Volleyball Weekly Spotlight. So, again, Dan Friend of Lewis, Brad Rostratter of UC San Diego, Theo Edwards of CSUN, and Jay Hosick of George Mason. As we continue on, there was so much volleyball happening in week number 1. And to you guys, were there any super unexpected results from the week beyond? We already talked about Lincoln Memorial's performance. That, a lot of teams are coming in with some new faces, which was unexpected. Like for instance, Penn State, you'd mentioned, they didn't have 3 of their starters. Jacob Pasture didn't play till the second match. There are a few things going on. I don't know if this is a coach thing, just trying out lineups, but did anything else surprise you in week 1 competition? We'll start with Brad.
Yeah, I thought to me, out at Provo, they had 2 new setters, Joe Carlos at UC Irvine, and then Heath Hughes for BYU, 2 new transfer setters that had big impacts for them as well. So I was watching a lot up there.
We had a new setter too. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, Good Morgan.
That's right. We'll mention Kevin Calling. Yeah, I was wondering about that too, but I was going to wait for Dan to say something about it.
Oh, he was talking about new setters. I was like, well,
I was trying to get a scoop without being too obvious. I gotta.
Hey, he was puking on the side of the road on the way to the airport, so he didn't make a trip. Unfortunately, I felt bad for him. But Tyler was great. Tyler stepped in, did a great job.
So it's the cheaper chicken on the way to the airport, huh, Dan? You guys were trying to cut some costs there.
I guess 4:30 in the morning. I guess we're dropping by some drive-thrus. I didn't realize.
So Brad, the names that you'd had are the teams. You said the 2 setters as Carlos and Heath Hughes, a transfer from Grand Canyon. So the MPSF former setters going into, well, actually an interconference transfer in Carlos over to UC Irvine in the Big West. So how do you think they performed on that as far as this weekend?
Yeah, I think it was, for a lot of those teams that are bringing in those transfers, whether it's traditional transfers or grad transfers, they're coming in and it's not perfectly smooth. The teams that have been together a little bit longer play a little bit better early on in the year. But you see it in glimpses of how efficient they could be, how smooth they can be, and the impact they can start adding for Joe more offensively and the team's efficiency. And then for Heath, just providing that all around setting experience and the ability to put up a little bit better block as well up there.
Yep. Let's jump over to Jay Hosick.
Well, I think for me, BYU looked like BYU of old. I know last year they struggled a little bit and had some new guys and kind of missing a couple of pieces that were key for them, but they looked really, really solid. I was pretty impressed by the way they played. I know it's early in the year, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're going to win the championship or anything, but they look pretty solid. And I thought St. Francis out of Pennsylvania had a good weekend. Stanford is one of the teams that a lot of people are talking about is kind of rising from the ashes since a couple of years ago when they dropped that program, and all of a sudden, Stanford's got some great recruits in, and they're doing some nice things. But St. Francis, nobody expected them to go 5 with Stanford, and they could have easily won that one. So, I'm pretty impressed by that. And Penn State without 3 other starters, that's scary.
Yep. How about you, Theo?
Yeah, I think of the ones that we haven't covered much, I think the UCLA match, obviously against San Diego. I hate to rub salt in the wound, but I don't know that this is necessarily an insult to San Diego. UCLA played phenomenal, and they had a completely separate lineup from what they did the night before against us. And I believe, and Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they set the single match record for aces. Is that the case? I saw them someone posted that, and I was like, wow, is that true?
Yeah, I get to see the release on that one.
Okay.
How many was it?
17, Brad?
I think it was 18.
18?
It felt like it.
Yeah, it was.
Brad, just so you know, it is so great when you lose and get on here, because we're gonna be kind of like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, they did some impressive things from the end line, and it was truly special, considering that it was, I don't know if you can call it a second string, but it was a completely different lineup from what they had played the night before. And then I think it would be a disservice to not mention what Jalen Jasper did against Lincoln Memorial, because I think that was an early in the week match, and it may have led coaches to believe that Lincoln Memorial wasn't as good as they were. But Jalen Jasper hit 486, had 21 kills on 37 swings, and he was electric. I mean, I think from a blocking perspective, he was really a problem for them as well. And so to see those types of performances, is pretty cool to see in week 1 for sure.
Yeah, Jalen had 21 kills, 30 on 37 attempts, hitting 486, 5 aces and 6 digs and 2 blocks. And if you watch some replays, his apex and his jump hitting over blocks is pretty insane. So he's got some new legs on or something, because he's flying.
He looked really impressive.
Yep.
Well, Theo kind of took mine. I wanted to talk about UCLA. I think we played them last year, and I think the depth that they have, you want to call it their B team. I don't think it's a B team. They have 2 starting lineups or 3, and they can use whichever they want to against you, which makes them extremely difficult to scout. So I think they're a very talented team, all the way down to like guy 20, you know what I mean? It would start in most gyms across the country. And so I just think you're seeing them mature as an entire group, and certainly putting themselves in that conversation as a national championship as the season folds on and John finds the right flow. So beyond that, I might have mentioned, we didn't mention NJIT. They went into Purdue Fort Wayne, kind of a quiet win maybe, but they've got a good group between Julian and Alessandro, and both had nice nights, and hit like 403 to 173, and certainly Purdue's trying to find which pieces are going to work for them, but they do return a couple really good ones in Dietrich and their middle. And so, but yeah, I think in NJIT will be a good team to watch out of the EVA and what they can kind of accomplish from that standpoint. So,
yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. I wanted to go into our next part, focusing on, I know we mentioned some top athlete performances, but I have you knock on one, and I have 4 categories, and I'm just going to randomly put it on one coach here. All right. So, offensive player of the week, and I feel like Theo's got his notes right there, so he can just bust that out.
Yeah, I think if I had to put one, it's probably Sandy. And I mentioned him, in our pre-talk before the season started, and he hit 588. And obviously Lewis kind of got the blunt edge of that performance, but he was fantastic. And I think you gotta give him some props. 588 as a pin hitter is pretty unbelievable.
Yep. All right. Next category. Defensive player of the week will go to Brad.
I'm going Merrick McHenry. His serve has been wicked. We didn't even see it. We got to see a lot of it in preparation. He's serving great. He's blocking great. He's moving really, really well, pin to pin. I don't know what his numbers were, but he has a huge impact on the match, just with his ability to move side to side. His serve last year didn't seem like it was coming with as much pace, but now he's hitting it in the 60s, and he has a hybrid out of it, and it's pretty impressive to see. So he's definitely has a huge impact on teams going up against them and at the net with him being such a force.
All right. Okay. Libero of the week. We got to give love to those guys. I love Dan Smirk, so I'm going to have to pick him on that one.
I don't have a clue. I'm not going to be able to tell you, like, honestly, like, ask Jay that. Ask me center and ask Jay that. Okay. All right. There you go.
All right. Are we going to get transfer here from Dan to Jay on the Libero of the week?
I'll take the center. Okay.
Anybody who is old enough to remember this reference of different strokes where little Coleman would go, "Which Coleman, Willis? I'm going to talk about the gooch at UCLA. That kid's good. He's my gooch of the week. He get a ton of digs in the match because there wasn't that much play. Well, watch this kid as the season progresses. He's going to be really fun to watch. And if you're the starting libero at UCLA, you know they've got like 15 of them in the wings somewhere. You got to be doing something. So the gooch, that's my choice.
That's Troy Gooch, the redshirt senior from Buffalo, New York, over at UCLA. I heard a lot of chatter about him being the one to watch. So this one's an easy one. Team of the week. Who did I skip out on? Was that
Dan?
Oh, it's back to me. Team of the week.
Okay. You said center. You know what? I didn't get center, but go ahead and name a center.
I'll take both. How about that? Okay. So
all right, sounds good.
UCLA is my team of the week. Just so you know, they've got the pieces, the depth. They're going to be the team of the week. And then my center it's Cole Kush, right, from Lincoln Memorial. Is that pronounced right?
Yep.
JUCO transfer, right? That comes in and is running this squad and 4 matches in a week, getting them a win at Santa Barbara, and showing how it's done. So that would be my center. So.
All right, let's go to the next segment here. What are you guys watching in week 2? Let's see. Let's go with it. We'll start off with Jay on this one.
Hawaii, Ball State, watching that one twice. I'm watching NJIT against McKendree and Lindenwood. Dan mentioned them earlier. They're pretty good. NJIT's got a lot of upperclassmen that have played together for a few years. Last year, they made a run for the EIVA title, came up just a little bit short. But I think NJIT is going to be a team that outside of our conference, because we all know how good they are inside the EIVA. If you're playing them outside the EIVA and you're not paying attention, it's going to be a tough loss. It's going to be a tough match. Those are the 2 that I'm watching the most.
All right. How about you, Theo? I think you're off this week, aren't you? You got Cal Lutheran one, right?
We have Cal Lutheran, and we play actually Edward Waters, new-ish program. But the 2 that I think that are most exciting, I'm excited to see Brad travel to Chicago and take on Loyola. Loyola, I haven't seen them play yet. Obviously, John Hawk's new coach there, and kind of excited to see those 2 programs go head to head. And then Santa Barbara takes on Stanford. I think that'll be an excellent matchup. Obviously, Santa Barbara's got some things to work on and some tweaks that they got to make. It'd be interesting to see if they can bounce back and make some adjustments.
Yep. Okay. Nice stuff. Dan.
Yeah, I think my picks are pretty similar to Jay's. I wanted to see the Ball State. They're in our league. They play Hawaii, and then we were talking about NJIT. So certainly those were right ones I really want to see how they kind of roll out. And then, yeah, get to see Brad. It'd be great. So I get to watch him play. So I'm happy. We do play. I give a shout out. We play S&T is an inaugural first-year program. They play Loyola tonight, and they play us tomorrow night. So those guys have been working hard to get their program off the ground in terms of that. And so they're kind of open their season up here in Chicago, which is great. And so
Brad, who is that? Or Dan, who is that you mentioned?
Missouri S&T. So they're a newer team out of this the GLVC that sponsored men's volleyball down by St. Louis a little bit. So, and then you got Maryville, who's in their second year, but they're going to be playing some matches as well. So,
Awesome.
Brad, what you got?
Yeah. Well, we're excited to go bear the cold, and I got to go Parker shopping and get my scarves and gloves. Yeah, I mean, Santa Barbara, Stanford is exciting for me. Just seeing how Santa Barbara responds. Rick always does such a good job with those guys, and I know they're going to be fired up to go take on the trees up in Palo Alto. So that's going to be a fun one. And then Hawaii Ball State is going to be a fun match to watch and check in on afterwards as well.
Yep. I'm only going to add this one.
About those guys, right? Didn't Princeton come out?
They come out and they play UCLA, which that'll be their first go around in the LA trip this year. By the way, Brad, I'm surprised that you and Theo, it's 75 degrees, but it's raining like crazy. You don't already have like a park or anything like that to keep you guys dry? I know you got your Ugg boots and your beanies on at 75-degree weather, but come on.
We got a double hoodie
from their cars to their offices over there. So
I got an 80s windbreaker over here, Jay. Just trying to keep the water off me.
Sweet. Just get your windshield wipers to work correctly. You guys don't really know what those things are out there on the West Coast.
From Pella windows to members only. That's Theo Edwards modeling. NIL deals available at Cal State Northridge. I could drop one. It was because Long Beach State was up in Canada, McMaster's. They actually had their first match this week against King. And I know they're, obviously in the top 4, and they're playing with a chip on their shoulder and looking really good, at least from the footage that I could see that came down from McMaster's. So really interested to see how Long Beach opens up their season. So anything else we've missed, gentlemen, that has hit your radar? I'm afraid to mention the one thing that did come out this week, and maybe I just stir the pot and throw it out there. But this week, Lee Feinswag, the editor of volleyballmag.com, had posted that the NCAA is not going to be doing any social media for men's volleyball this year. Respond if you like. Just get one of your thoughts.
Let me go first, since I wear a couple different hats, and I'll give what I can. And me and Jay have talked, and if you don't know, sit on the AVCA as a D1, D2 men's rep as well. Oh, by the way, I was supposed to stop saying that. Men's Collegiate Championship.
That's what I had to ask you about that. Men's Collegiate Championship. All right.
I want to plug that. We're going to kind of try to, it is, and that's what it is. We don't need to defer between the D2s and the D1s. Lincoln Memorial is a great team. It doesn't matter what level they are right there. They're a men's college championship team, you know what I mean, in terms of that. And so, but I think with some of the social media stuff, the NCAA has come out and said that, yeah, we're not doing anything. And our championship committee last year, when it came out, was really working hard behind the scenes and kind of going up the ladder with the NCAA to try to figure out why they weren't, and try to do some things. And we didn't have a lot of luck or success with that in terms of getting some straight answers and what they're going to do. So it really is a follow-up from even last year in terms of them saying that. I sit on what's called a connections committee that was this morning before this, and posed the question to the NCAA champ rep that was there, and asked for a list of what collegiate sports are represented at what level by the NCAA. And so hopefully I'll be able to get that list a little bit and be like, I know they do the Frozen Four. That's a collegiate championship sport. You've got gymnastics, you've got bowling, you've got some other ones. And he was pretty open and honest. He's like, we don't cover a large percentage of them, but hopefully getting that list to kind of see. But I think the main topic of question becomes, if the NCAA is not going to do it, which we all know they're not, let us outsource and go a different way and find somebody that does. And that was a plan that came up from the championship committee, where it's like, hey, can we outsource this and use somebody else to kind of help maybe push content? Because I think we have a lot of people that would help drive the content. And initially they said no last year. So I'll be curious to see where that conversation or topic or dialogue might be able to go, because I think we can service ourselves. We got a lot of people that have a lot of interest in it and certainly like men's volleyball. And maybe it doesn't have to be the NCAA one that's driving our social media content in terms of that.
Yep. Good. All right. Anyone else want to sound off?
Yeah, I because we're hosting this year, obviously it's going to fall a little bit on our shoulders. My thought, I talked to Dan about this just the other day, and it's a bummer, right? I mean, we obviously want the NCAA to take us seriously and provide some content for our followers and people that are fans of our sport. but he's right. The challenge is that they're not going to do it. What can we do? And some ideas that have been floated out there. One of them was putting it in charge of each team. Let each team go out there and send some stuff and just do the same hashtag all year, and get them to run it through the NCAA site or however we want to run it, through the Twitter, through the Instagram, however they wants to go. There's enough people around the country that have a vested interest in wanting to get content out there. So if we're able to tap into that, energy and push it forward, more power to us. Maybe we can change the way it's done in the future. Who knows? Men's volleyball on the cutting edge of something. Ooh, be amazing. See how it goes. We're in beginning stages of those talks, but we can't wait too long. We got to get on it quickly. Got to make sure we move forward.
Hashtag NCAA men's volleyball, right? Isn't that what I told you, Rob?
Yeah, hashtag NCAA MVB. Hashtag
Yeah.
NCAA MVB.
Put that on the volley talk. Let everybody see it.
Yep, and we're going to send an email out hopefully from the ABC to all the college coaches and their SIDs to kind of start using that so we can maybe drive some content. So Theo and Brad, share that.
Sounds good.
And I think that's one of the cool pieces with the men's volleyball world is there is so much love and support and people who, if given the opportunity, would love to help and assist and aid in providing content for not just all the athletes within our programs, but for the greater exposure of men's volleyball. And we've had a lot of really awesome Instagram accounts already, from Rob to Off the Block to AVB Network and so many countless other ones that are helping to shed the light and expose what's going on in our wonderful sport. And the more we're able to kind of reach out and have those people doing that on a more formal basis, I think it only helps the exposure, it only helps the experience, it only helps everything that we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you guys paid a ton of attention to what the NCAA was doing as far as social media for men's volleyball in the past, but it was incredibly underwhelming. I think honestly, them going to a place where they're just going to say, we're not going to do it is probably more along the lines of what they have done in the past in general. I can only speak for our conference, but I feel like every single year, the Big West has done a better job at managing social media. And obviously it's biased, right? It's pushing our conference, it's pushing our teams. But back to along the lines of the ideas you guys are talking about, I think if you give each conference or teams an opportunity to play host for a week at a time, the amount of content and what it would look like if we got the login for NCAA and could post what was coming out of these conferences and these programs. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, we all know because we follow it and we're there and we're seeing what everybody's posting, but it's incredibly entertaining and it's stuff that it would be obviously worth sharing and could help grow our game. So I hope that the NCAA is open to allowing something like that to be the case, because we could probably do a better job than they have.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, because the fan account of NCAA MVB just this week alone grew by 1,000 followers, and the engagement is intense on it. Yeah. So that's a great idea. I would say whoever's watching, DM at NCAA MVB on Instagram and on Twitter, and maybe they can connect you with posting and all that stuff. So, because I know it's a few volunteers that are on that account, at least we can get that going, and we can get this thing really, really blown up for sure. What I thought was one of the great hashtags that's been going along with NCAA MVB was NCAA's best kept secret, after Al Knipe's quote at the press conference at the NCAA semis last year. How men's volleyball, once you're watching it, you're hooked because it's such a fast power game and it's so entertaining. So want to end our week 1 episode or recap and week 2 preview with one of the best social posts I've seen by Ohio State. One of their, I guess, is a serve and pass. They said the question was, they put to the players was, which player would you trust the least to be your babysitter? You got to go check it out. It is hilarious. And it was an anonymous vote, which I'm kind of worried for Birch and his boys there. So,
What are we doing?
So Dan, if you're going to Ohio State, don't look for this player. All right, hey, I'm Dan Lewis, Red Roster of UC San Diego, Theo Edwards of Cal State Northridge, and Jay Hossack of George Mason. Another great episode. Looking forward to see how you guys do this week, and looking forward to connecting next Monday.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.